This is the basics of human facial proportions. I've started by taking a 9-inch by 12-inch piece of paper and I've divided it down the center vertically and down the center horizontally. Then I've drawn an oval that fills up almost the entire space of the top left corner, and I've divided that also vertically and horizontally. This vertical line is the center line. This horizontal line is the eye line. Halfway between the eye line and where the chin would be, I'm going to bisect that again, and this is going to be the nose line. From the nose line to the chin, I'm going to bisect it once more, and this is going to be the mouth line. Now, when talking about facial proportions, these are generalities, so this isn't going to be the same for everyone. Some people have different shaped heads, some people have bigger eyes, bigger mouths, smaller mouths, different shaped noses, etc. But this essentially teaches you where the general places each of the different features will be. So the general spacing for the human head is 5 eyes wide. So if I put an eye in the middle and then draw 2 more eyes on either side, that's the general spacing for where your eyes typically would be. From here, I'm going to go from the corners of the center eye, and I'm going to go straight down to the nose line. This is the average width of a nose. Now going from the actual eyes, I'm going to go from the center all the way down to the mouth line. This is generally how wide a mouth would be. Then I'm going to start just below the eye line. I'm going to go up to the eye line. I'm going to curve around, and as I come around, some people have earlobes that are unattached and some have attached. Depending on what you have, you are going to curve that around or make it connect straight. Now, one tip when it comes to doing human faces is after you get all done, you've got your eyes, nose, mouth, and doing the hair and everything like that. If it still doesn't look correct, typically 9 times out of 10, it's the shape of the head. So after you put in the facial features and everything, if it still doesn't look correct, I highly recommend going in and changing the shape of the face. So the first thing we're going to look at is the eye. So we're going to look at the eye from the side and from the front to give an idea of what we are looking at. So out of the back of the eye is the ocular nerve. This is what connects to the brain and sends the different light signals so that we can actually see. The eye has an opening on one side. This opening allows light into the eye, and photoreceptors in the back and in the sides of the eye absorb the light and measure it with different cones and rods to tell the brain what it is seeing. Inside the eye is the iris. The iris ends up being like a bunch of fingers that are overlapping that can come together or pull apart. When it is pulled together like this, the pupil, the dark part of the eye, is smaller, which lets less light in. When it is pulled back, it lets more light in so that if you're in the dark, you can see much better. So this kind of looks like a flower from the side. And these fingers overlap one another like this. making a circle in the middle. Now, when we see the eye, we see this black pupil in the middle. And I'm not going to color that in because I'm using a black marker. But ultimately, the blackness that we see is not the color of the eye. It's the fact that your eye is not reflecting any light. The cones and rods, the receptors for light, absorb that and don't allow it to come back out. Not to mention the shape of the eye is curved, so unless it is perfectly hitting the back, which is where your ocular nerve is, it will not reflect any light. So the pupil always looks black. Next is where the plates are that hold the eye in place. Now, your eye travels around freely in your head, and there are muscles that help it move around, but ultimately it is just floating around in your head. So to keep your eyeballs in your head, there is a brow bone and a cheekbone. These bones keep your eye from falling out. So when we see that from the front view, it's going to cut off the top a little bit of the eyeball and cut off the bottom a little bit of the eyeball. The skin wraps around the bones. So this is going to come around, and your top eyelid goes up a little bit into behind the bone, or folds over, and then comes down a little bit. When your eyes are closed, this fold flattens out and the skin looks like it's taut. But I'm going to do an open eye like this. The same thing happens around with the cheekbone. Then your eyelashes come out here. So if we look at that from the front, you're going to start here. This is where your tear duct is. It's going to go around this brow bone and come up here. And then it's going to follow the brow bone. So I said the brow bone down here, but the cheekbone. So this bottom part is going to follow the cheekbone, and this top part is going to follow the brow bone. In the corners of your eyes, you can see some of the muscles that help your eye move from side to side. So when you are drawing eyelashes, eyelashes are radial. They start in the center, going straight up and down, and then as you move out to the side, they are going to kick out farther and farther and farther. For those who wear mascara a lot, you might draw a couple lines, all touching together at the tips. The bottom of the eye has lashes. The bottom of the eye has lashes just on the edge typically because you have your nose protecting this area. Eyelashes are the first defense. So when an eyelash is touched, your eyes instinctively close to protect the eye from being harmed. So this is the basics of the eye. Next, we're going to be looking at the nose. So the nose we're going to zoom in on this area of the face right here. So here's the center eye. Here's the center line. Here's the nose line. And here's the side nose lines. Halfway between the center line and the side nose lines, we're going to bisect either side. This area helps us figure out where the tip of the nose is going to be. So we're going to fill this area, and these lines end up being the edges of where the center of the nose would be. Then on either side is where the nostrils would be. So the nostrils are about half the size of the center circle. These areas where we put the lines, we're going to fill those in for the nostril holes. Now, a lot of times when people draw a nose, they try to do lines on the side of the nose, which is fine. But ultimately, lines indicate edges, and noses blend into the face. So there isn't really an edge on a nose. So when drawing a nose, you want to worry more about shading for where the edge of the nose is than you want to draw lines. The bridge of the nose is going to be the lightest because it's the closest area or the farthest out area, so light can hit it. And then around the nose where the eyes would be is going to be the darkest because that's the farthest point away. So the closer it is, the lighter it's going to be. The farther it is, the darker it's going to be. Next, we're going to look at the ear. The ear we're going to look at from two different directions as well. Typically, when you look at an ear, you don't look at it from the side. When you're talking to somebody, you typically are looking at them from the front of their face. So when you see the ears, they look more like this. Understanding what the ear looks like from the side view helps us understand what it looks like from the front view. So the different parts of the ear, the deepest chamber that goes somewhat like this is known as the conch. This is the echo chamber, or the one that's going to capture most of the sound. This edge around the ear is called the helix. And this channels sound around and then down to this area. Up here is the triangular fossa. And this area is the scapha. But all this sound gets bounced around in the ear. And your ear needs to catch that sound when it's getting funneled. And that's caught by the trachea. Now your ear needs to breathe. So it's got this intertracheal notch, which allows air to move in and out, which allows sound to be heard more fully and to keep cycling the sound waves that are moving in and out of the ear. So once we know what the ear looks like from the side view, then we can translate that into the front view. So we're going to start with the helix, which goes around like this. We've got the triangular fossa, which is up here. We've got the scapha, which is back here. We've got the conch, which goes like this. And then we've got the tragus right here. So knowing what the ear looks like from the side view is going to help us draw from the front view. Finally, I'm going to split this and I'm going to do the mouth. So I'm going to zoom in on this area. So here's the center line. Here's the mouth line. And then I'm going to put in these two lines coming from the center of the eye as the side mouth lines. We're going to start from this corner. We're going to go at a diagonal going up, around, back, and down. Then I'm going to mirror that on the other side. I'm going to go up, around, back, and down. Then I'm going to go from the corners of the mouth, and I'm going to attach this corner to this corner. Now mouths have this little dip here and this dip here, which is known as the Cupid's bow. So this is the basics of what a mouth looks like. A tip when drawing a mouth that is open. You're going to do your mouth. You're going to leave this gap for the mouth to be open, and then we're going to do the bottom lip. Now when doing teeth, most people are going to want to draw squares like this, which is fine. But most times when you are drawing teeth, this will look very ragged. So to make your teeth look more precise, there is something known as an implied line. Implied line is putting two sections of the line without closing it. So when you're drawing your teeth, you might want to use the implied line because it'll make the teeth look whiter and not so broken apart or with such extreme separations. And as you start going around the sides of the mouth, then you can start showing the edges. And then the bottom, you're just showing the bare top of the teeth. So if we go back into the original face, we're going to bisect here, put that center nose and put this in here. We're going to shade these areas. Put our lips in. Put our eyes in. And like we showed before, the tops of the iris looks like it's getting cut off and the bottom is just touching the bottom. We're going to put in our ears. Now the last thing is the hairline is typically halfway between the eyes and the top of the head. So if we bisect that, this is the hairline for those of us who have hair. Then we're going to go out from the center or from the side, depending on your parts. And then we're going to do our hairstyles with this. Trick with hair is that you need to include the highlights and the lowlights. The highlights are going to be closest to you, and that's going to be the brightest area, and that's going to be on top of the head. And then as it gets underneath or farther back, it's going to get darker. So we're going to shade that darker. So this is the basics of facial proportions and how to draw faces. Thank you for your time and your attention. Do more, do better.